How do you define charity and how do you define philanthropy?
I'm a person who doesn't prefer to be semantically trapped, gently in conversations. Philanthropy is more structured.
Can we say charity is more guilt-driven?
Middle class upbringing, with my father working in a bank for several years, my mom was a homemaker.
But on scale, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be prudent to start small and then grow rather than look at something at scale?
An impact on me. One was the emergence of party, which happened around 2011
Party was in Delhi.
in Delhi.
I think an area that connected with me instantly is upliftment of women, if I can put it. Welcome to Exceed the Brief. My name is Dr. Sanjay Arora, and Exceed the Brief aims to interview, interact, chat with people who have pushed the boundaries, who've gone beyond what is normal, gone beyond what is expected to do the unexpected. Today we are talking about philanthropy, and I have the privilege of chatting with a dear friend, Sriram. Thank you for coming all the way from Bangalore to chat with us today.
My pleasure.
And the idea is to understand, what is the definition of purpose, remind us what's possible when we actually aim higher, especially in the area of philanthropy. And before we get into it, this has been a common question in my head. How do you define charity and how do you define philanthropy? Are they the same things or they have very different meanings?
Yeah, I'm not a person, Dr. Sanjay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm a person who doesn't prefer to be semantically trapped, gently in conversations. But I think a simple definition or a simple difference between charity and philanthropy could be philanthropy is more structured. So everybody wants to give. Fundamentally, I believe that everybody in this world, the starting assumption is that people are good and they want to give back in any form or shape that they can. Philanthropy is more evolved and more informed with a certain wisdom of how to give. Charity is just giving. So, in other words, charity is probably more impromptu and instantaneous and immediate gratification. Philanthropy could sometimes be delayed gratification, but the quality and the wisdom behind that philanthropy might be more structured and informed on who am I giving to, what is the problem I'm trying to solve by giving, and what is my role that I can possibly see beyond the money that I can involve myself with. So there is more nuance to probably philanthropy, and it has gone through its own evolution over the last many years.
That makes me think about two outcomes. So can we say charity is more guilt-driven, whereas philanthropy is more empathy-driven? Or too hard?
I don't want to take it away from people because that would disincentivize people from being charitable, the sort of framing of it. But I think perhaps charity is easier to begin with. There are lesser frictions in being charitable, lesser inertia in being charitable. Philanthropy should take some effort and time to be invested to inform oneself.
I get that. I completely, and I'll tell you my journey in that. But tell me, you studied at BITS Pilani, did engineering, you worked in various large corporates, and then you've now been part of the social entrepreneurship ecosystem for over 20 years. Take us through your early journey, that doing engineering, working in corporates, and then switching to philanthropy. How did that happen?
I would definitely say not by design. It's a series of good accidents, as I would like to put it. Very fortunate to have been part of those good accidents. So, Dr. Sanjay, I was born and brought up in Chennai.
Okay.
Middle class upbringing, with my father working in a bank for several years. My mom was a homemaker. I think a significant influence now, when I look back in hindsight, and there's always a benefit of hindsight, I think I would trace a lot of it to my school, which was where I spent 10 years of my life in one school.
Right.
And the design and the purpose of the school was to intentionally enroll children from the low income groups. So a lot of my classmates, their parents were not as privileged as many of us. I was certainly an aberration at my school and not an intentionally enrolled student. And my job description for 10 years was to enable others' success, and nobody cared about my own success.
Oh,
Did somebody tell me this explicitly? No. Did I realize this while I was at school? Perhaps not. But now, with that experience behind me, when I look back, I think that helped a lot in shaping who I was, who I am, and how I thought about things. And I don't think these are point in time realizations. You go through certain habits that are deeply ingrained in you for a prolonged period of time, that after a certain point, it becomes muscle memory.
sure,
That is your default response.
sure.
So I think I owe a lot of that to my school. I think going to college in Pilani opened the worldview for me, expanded the worldview for me. Suddenly, now I was in the company of people who were all so-called toppers,
Correct, right?
and who knew so many more things than I did, even though we were all 17 years old. I think that experience was very, very enriching. And these are people from across different parts of the country, not just Chennai.
Right.
So I think 4 years of that immersion, so to speak, also had a lot of influence in how I thought about things. Independence being one of the most important ones. You're thrown open in the desert for 4 years, where you have to handle everything by yourself, and that teaches you a lot of things over that period of time. And then started my career in the for-profit world in consulting. Spent about 8 years there, as anybody would begin a career without knowing what I really want to do. I would be lying to myself and to you if I say I knew what I wanted to do in life, or here was the purpose of my life. That is very naive. But I think 8 years in corporate, and then the entrepreneurship bug bit me. Again in the for-profit mode. Spent a couple of years trying to do something, which is today's urban company.
Okay.
So it was a two-sided marketplace that me and a couple of my friends had imagined to try to bring together cooks, house helps,
Okay.
plumbers, electricians, and carpenters.
Oh, wow.
We covered some distance but did not go the long mile. But I was a failed entrepreneur. I'm very proud to say that.
What was the name of that startup?
We had not named it. I think it was, we just organically went about first trying to understand the problem.
Which year was this?
This was 2010-11. I stayed at it for 1 year. However, the shift in thinking happened through, I would say, two major life events that happened in India, and as a consequence also had an impact on me. All right. One was the emergence of Aam Aadmi Party, which happened around 2011.
Okay.
So suddenly now across India, people's awakening of their political consciousness, all right, it became sort of a mainstream topic to discuss in your coffee days and baristas, right? I'm not a Starbucks boy. I'm still a cafe coffee day boy back in those days. But suddenly everybody is taking some sort of an interest in politics, right, or wanting to be a part of it. That kindled my interest in political economy. So until that point of time, I was trained as a child to read the Hindu, specifically the editorial pages.
Right.
Right. But I never pursued it very seriously until 2011, where I started learning more and more about our history, politics, economy of the country.
Were you in Delhi at that time?
I was in Bangalore.
But Aam Aadmi Party was in Delhi.
In Delhi. But then they had the Karnataka chapter. There were a bunch of people who were volunteers trying to do something in their own small way. But I think I would say, in summary, the intellectual curiosity to understand political economy got triggered. And I'm very grateful that habit continues even today. Something that started only 14 years back.
I would have thought politics would trigger you to do exactly opposite, that the corruption of politics would push you into fighting politics. And here, you've been positively influenced by politics. I'm just amazed at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, I was 28, right? So I didn't think too much. I was curious, so I wanted to learn more. But the one thing that I would think really nudged me into doing something, because as I'm sure you would appreciate, Dr. Sanjay, talk is cheap, right?
Yeah.
Acting on it is a tough.
Very true.
2012, when Nirbhaya happened in India,
Okay.
that was something that really pushed me to do something, like get out of my bed and do something. I also went through a phase of anger, frustration, not very healthy to anybody, including myself. But then I chanced into a friend of mine who was always socially inclined. I'm a convert, but he was always socially inclined. And we reconnected and we tried to do something. We tried to build a portal
Okay.
in India that crowdsourced all forms of violence against women that was happening in the country, mapped on the India map. So at any given point of time, somebody could really take a look at it and say, let me have some data on what's happening. So you could think of it as a platform that was a repository of data on violence against women. So we tried to build that. He was a tech guy. I brought in some people and some money, and that morphed into my meeting with the then CEO of Amnesty International. One thing led to another. Again, not by design. And then, as destiny would have it, I ended up joining Amnesty International full time, which meant that I had to wind down every other pursuit that I was probably dabbling in. And then, yes, and the rest has been last 14 years in the development sector specifically.
Wow. Wow. No, I think an area that connected with me instantly is maybe upliftment of women, if I can put it very broadly. I keep thinking about how I can. So, if I was to go through my journey, right, and people ask me what are the areas that appeal to you. So, women's health or upliftment of women is very integral to that. And when you read about, these young girls being, kidnapped and, pushed into prostitution and all, that is something, that really, I don't know what I can do, but maybe we'll find a way together and do that. But no, thank you for doing what you're doing. This is just amazing. Explain to me, what is social entrepreneurship? What is it an evolved term from, or is it just simply what it means? How is this evolved really, actually?
Uh, well, the word has been in existence for some time now, particularly maybe outside of India. Um, but to me, Dr. Sanjay, it simply means I am in pursuit of a business like any other business. I see an opportunity, I see a market, I see a problem statement that I care about and want to solve for. And I want to do it in a manner that is sustainable without having to bleed money. But at the same time, the intent of doing this is perhaps not to maximize profits, but the intent is to solve for a social problem that you care about.
Maximize impact.
Maximize impact while being sustainable in doing that is how.
So it's for profit,
Of course,
but aim towards social impact.
that is correct. Either pursued in a for-profit manner or in a not-for-profit manner.
Right.
Not-for-profits, one chooses to be as a non-profit because there are still certain problem statements that may not lend itself into a commercially viable business model yet. And therefore, you choose a not-for-profit way to begin your journey. But if the intent is to say, if there is an opportunity to make it commercially viable with lower profits, then that would be the natural way to go.
Right. And is that the reason why what used to be called as NGO has now moved to NPO? I mean, non-government organizations, now not-for-profit organizations. Is that the reason for that change?
A bit of yes and no. I think that phrase non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations, the intent of them was to do things that could add value to what the government is also trying to do. Okay? Because government is a huge infrastructure.
What you're doing at the nudge.
Exactly, right? So can we complement and supplement the efforts of the government who by design are meant to serve the communities at large?
Sure.
And if there are any meaningful ways to contribute to that agenda,
Right.
can we do it in a not-for-profit manner, right? But catering to the bottom of the pyramid by design. not for profit is a legal structure. And I often say this, that it's very easy to say what you're not for, but what are you for? All right. So I would like to call ourselves, at least at the Nudge, as a for purpose organization. I'm not for profit, but I'm for purpose.
And that's how you define philanthropy with purpose at the Nudge.
That is correct. Correct.
But tell me, since you've been part of the Nudge since the beginning and it's been 10 years, take us through the early part of what happened over the last 10 years and how your role has evolved, the founding team and what's happened over the last 10 years at the Nudge.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so it's a it's a not-for-profit startup. That's how we have always believed. And we were a bunch of people who cared about poverty alleviation as a cause and as a problem statement, very similar to how you care about women as an audience in particular. Uh, for us, poverty as a problem statement was something that we all cared about. However, having said that, Dr. Sanjay, we did not start with hard point of views on what does it mean if you start double clicking things, right? The simplest thing that we did, and I would also strongly recommend, is for people to spend time with the audience whose problems they intend to solve. So we spent a lot of time in urban slums in Bangalore, because incidentally we were all based in Bangalore. So access is easy. You just walk into an urban slum, you spend time with people and try to understand and make sense of what are the problem statements that ail them. And one of the things that kept appearing as a recurrent theme was the issue of unemployment, underemployment, or lack of employable skill sets among the youth in particular. Right? So how do we systematically solve that problem? Using first principles thinking, right, as any entrepreneur would do, is how the Nudge journey began. So we visited about 112 communities, focus group discussions, Excel sheets, notes, like spreading ourselves into different corners, coming back every day, huddling to see what did you observe, what did I observe. And that informed us of a certain program design or a product design, which we thought we should attempt at.
But before this, Atul, who's the founder of the Nudge, maybe a little bit about his background. And I'm always curious that how do not-for-profit organizations attract great talent such as yourselves? And I've met a few people at the Nudge. It's a little perplexing that for-profit organizations sometimes are not able to attract the kind of talent that not-for-profit organizations attract. So is it a aberration with the Nudge, or it's generally seen? Because I've seen that in many other not-for-profit organizations that getting good talent is par for course, I would think.
Yeah, it continues to be a very hard problem because the incentives are not necessarily aligned in a way that we normally understand incentives, which is predominantly monetary. Here, the incentive for people to do what they do is purpose, which gives them the satisfaction that perhaps other avenues don't give, right? But to find those needles in the haystack, where are these people? How do we find them? Continues to be a hard problem. But going back a little bit to answer your question, Dr. Sanjay, so Atul and many of them, so Atul spent about 17 years in the corporate world across Google, InMobi, Samsung, Adobe, largely doing GTM roles or sales business development roles. But the idea was that I will do something charitable or philanthropic when I turn 60. But that 60 became 50 and 50 became 40, right? So the impatience started to grow. And at 40, he decided to call it quits and decided to start the Nudge. I was 32 back then. Today I'm 42. And I had already begun the journey via Amnesty International when I was 28. So for me, I don't think I had to think a lot. I've cared about working with people who are as committed as I think I am. Right. I happened to find Atul happened to find me, and things click, and that's how we came together. But finding the talent was incredibly hard in the first year. I should also call out that we were very privileged to have the support of Nandan and Tata Trust in year one of starting a non-profit, which is not very common. And that is a privilege that I'm deeply grateful to. Their support enabled us to recruit the kind of talent, perhaps at better speed than otherwise.
Sure.
So you don't think of a leadership team in year one, generally.
Right.
But we were able to assemble about 4 or 5 people who could hold fort on different parts of the organization to get things off the ground. Uh, Two things have always been as values, so to speak, has been one is doing evidence-based work. Right now, for example, if you care about trafficking of girls, right, or economic mobility of women, right, or financial independence of women, for example, there are many ways to do that. But given our target audience, which of those methods actually works and what is the science behind it uh, is something that we care about. So evidence is one, and the second is scale. Right. Unfortunately, in India, there is, as we say sometimes, it's a graveyard of great ideas. Right? Things work beautifully in small pockets, and there are incredible number of organizations who do unbelievable work, but at small scale. Right? If something is working, why don't we make it big? Uh, and coming from the world that some of us came from, the idea of imagining things big, dream with a little bit of audacity and ambition was already there, right? We just had to transfer those skill sets into a very different kind of a problem statement which we were not used to. And that's how the journey began. So evidence and scale always.
Evidence you meant by actually spending time
That is correct.
of the with the people for the problems that you want to solve,
Correct.
getting the feedback directly from them.
That is correct.
But on scale, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be prudent to start small and then grow rather than look at something at scale?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, million times zero is still zero. But the end objective was scale, right? So not to start with that. We have to first understand the user, what are we solving for, and design an experiment until you hit a point of success. Once we hit success, or in this case, impact, then we think about scaling that.
And I know there are three pillars that the nudge looks at: rural development, skill development, and social innovation. And I was fortunate to be part of the conference that was hosted in Mumbai some time ago. And I saw some glimpse of it. But maybe could you share maybe one or two stories of impact that you've been part of that are very close to you that touch upon these areas?
Yeah, yeah. So one of our large pieces of work is with rural women in rural India. We principally work with women, and we began our work in the state of Jharkhand in India.
Right.
And there are plenty of stories of that are very, very inspirational. But I would like to call out one Miss Agni Didi, right, who lives in a district called Lohardaga in Jharkhand. So when we met her for the first time, she belongs to a household whose annual income is between 25 to 35,000 rupees for a family of 5 people. All right. Most of them
3,000 rupees a month.
3,000 rupees a month, right? Most of them are distress migrants. So we are all opportunity-led migrants, but they migrate out of distress. 80% of what they earn as income is spent on food and energy. Correct. So there is no asset that Agni Didi owned for her to invest in something that is economically, productive.
Sure.
She doesn't own any land or any other form of asset, right? So how do you work with the Agni Didis of the world to pull them out of extreme poverty to a place where they are out of extreme poverty? That was the intent.
Sure.
We worked with each household for about 3 years. And we worked with 1,200 such Didis, as we call them. And at the end of 3 years, Dr. Sanjay, we saw a 92% success rate. And what I mean by success is, has the income of that household increased meaningfully? Has the household now started to save money, which they could then invest in other purposes?
Right.
Do they now own an asset in their name that could be economically productive? And a few other things. All right. Have they now started accessing credit? Because if I come from an extremely poor household, who's going to give me a loan or money or capital for me to invest it further? Nobody. Right. So now they are at a point where they can access credit, where they've begun to start accessing credit. You invest it back into your assets, you grow the asset, you borrow more, etc. And it's very heartening to see that progress uh, with sort of Agni. The remarkable thing, now, while we have designed for these things, one would think that yes, we designed for these things and they should work. But there are also things that have happened that one has not designed for, right? Which is to say, one of those women actually went on to stand in a local panchayat election.
Oh, wow.
With absolutely no history in politics or election or campaigning whatsoever. And she won by a huge margin. Now that is agency for women. This is truly a democratic win because she was one of those enterprising women. The community, because by virtue of her work, chose her unanimously in an election at the local level.
Wow.
And now she is a representative of the community coming from a tribal household in Jharkhand. She's probably never gone to school in her life. Her children were not educated. But because now they are economically productive and they have money, now children in Jharkhand from these families are actually going to a local school. They're able to access healthcare, which they were not able to access. But we didn't necessarily design to solve for education or healthcare. But because there is no money, they are now able to afford education and healthcare. And that's very heartening to see.
And you did this with 1,200 such women households
To begin with,
in Jharkhand.
in the state of Jharkhand, what has been incredible, particularly in the last 3 years, has been that this same program has now been rolled out to, or rather is going to scale with 350,000 households across India, across 8 states, in partnership with the government.
So you're talking about leveraging the network of the government, and that's what you said, that from 1,200 households in Jharkhand, now it is 350,000 households across the country.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Do most not-for-profit organizations work with the government, or do they also sort of work independently on their own?
Many of them do. Again, many. So let me put it this way. Quite a few of them do. Some of them want to do, and some of them choose not to do. Right. And it's their own prerogative and journey. But our point of view is that at the nudge, at least, there is a certain ceiling up to which a non-profit can grow, right? Because not-for-profits are dependent on philanthropic capital or charity. But if you want to do work at scale, the kind of financial resources that are necessary to do that, the money that is required, the number of people that are required, both of which government already has. And India is a very unique example. Right? There's no other country like India which has the kind of social infrastructure that India has. Right? We often talk about physical infrastructure and how it has jumped up by leaps and bounds in India. We talk about roads, we talk about dams, etc., etc. We talk about digital infrastructure today, about UPI having scaled magnificently. But very little is known about the social infrastructure. India is the only country in the world which has 100 million women already organized into what is known as self-help groups.
100
million women, right, already in self-help groups, right? So one self-help group is 10 women organized in a group. There are 10 million such groups in India, which is already created by the government of India. So think of it like a railroad on which you can overlay many things, right? Now, what do we want to
ride on that?
is something that should be meaningful, informed, and evidence based. But that railroad already exists. That road already exists. So how do we leverage on that road instead of trying to create something parallel?
Sure. So two questions from that. One is, do the recipients of this philanthropy initially start with some kind of skepticism? Why are you interested in my life? Where are you coming from? You are living in Bangalore. I'm living in Jharkhand. Why do you have an interest in my life? So, sort of things. So, is there a skepticism that you have to overcome? And similarly, does the government also then look at you that, why do you want to work with us? Why do you want to help us? So, how do you overcome these two, maybe little bit of hindrances that you might face?
Yeah. I think it boils down to building trust, right? Either with the communities or with the government, right? On why are you doing what you're doing? And it's a question of time. So, for example, in our case, it took us about 3 months to build trust with the communities that we wanted to work with. And it's a simple process of just showing up every day, right? Just be there. You don't have to weave a magic wand, but just being there every day means that it signals intent, it signals continuity, it signals persistence, right? And once we are there amidst the target audience, then the trust happens osmotically, right?
Sure.
That's one. With government, I think high quality work, when shown with evidence, right, is the simplest way to reach out to the government. Right? Please show me that something is working at a meaningful scale. Then let's talk about how we can, light up this in a very, very big way.
Right. Right. Interesting. I was going to ask you, I missed, why is the nudge written the way it is? The with a forward slash and nudge. Maybe there's a story behind that.
Yeah, yeah. So the name is inspired from the book called The Nudge.
Okay.
I would recommend your audience to definitely read that book. It's all about behavioral science of how small acts of nudging people in the right direction incrementally over a period of time can lead to a very large outcome.
Okay.
But the forward slash that you're referring to, if you notice, it's a forward slash.
Correct.
So it signals a positive difference that we want to make in the lives of the communities that we choose to serve, and therefore the forward slash. That's about it.
Moving forward.
Moving forward.
Perfect. Perfect. Simple but effective. And I'm sure people ask you this, why the forward slash?
Oh, it's a beautiful conversation starter at airports, at walks, and various places. Yes, it does help us begin a conversation.
Nice. So I'm going to give you a little bit about my journey in philanthropy and where I am today. And I'm sure this would be the story with many people as well. And then help us that where we are and how can we go from here. So, when I was running Suburban Diagnostics, and we used to, actively gift doctors and our customers during Diwali. So I'd spend 3-4 months choosing which gifts to give and then make a list of doctors and go and visit. And, it was full exercise. We did this for many years. But one day my wife and I just suddenly realized that we are giving gifts to people who already have everything. And just snapped one day that let's just not do this anymore. Because I think one or two doctors actually commented, what am I going to do with this? Or I don't need this, or I already have this. And here we are taking so much of effort and then you're getting this kind of a response. So we stopped doing that, and the same budget we allocated towards education of underprivileged girls. So, trying to help them, go up to class 10 and beyond. So girl education became an area of focus. Then we went to orphanages, we went to old age homes, we went to an agency which helps children cope with cancer and so I picked up children, women, underprivileged, education, health as areas where we could contribute. But it's very, as you said, ad hoc. It's not structured. So obviously there is an intent to take this thought of giving and take it to the next level, but we don't know how. And we don't know how, I'm sure many people who are going to watch us will also not know how. I think there's an intent of giving. Indians, I think, generally are happy to give, are gracious hosts. So if you could help us, how do you build this structured approach in giving?
Right. Right. Uh, Dr. Sanjay, I would say the first step is to spend time. Right. I think anybody who wants to give financially uh, is easy. What is very difficult to give is time. Amidst people like yourself who are very busy, it's difficult to carve out the time that is required for something. So I would say spending time first is critical. Uh, Out of the time that is spent, there is a strong connection to a problem that is built, right? Which otherwise, through money, appears a little distant, right? Yes, I'm giving money, I'm contributing to something, but what's happening with the money? Where is it going? Is it being used efficiently, etc.? Those questions and answers to those questions continue to elude you.
Right.
But spending time definitely builds trust, builds connection, builds meaning, builds intent. And once that happens, either if you want to do it yourself, if you want to solve the problem yourself, or you want to support an organization that may be already pursuing that,
Right.
uh, then spending time with that organization and the people involved in the organization helps enhance that trust. But then the question of where do I put my money, right? I think there today, again, I want to call out the difference and uniqueness of India. India is the only country in the world which has the CSR law today, which essentially mandates corporates to spend a percentage of their profits on charitable activities.
Right.
So that's about $3 to $4 billion in a year, growing at 13%. So there is a healthy pool of funds available there. Then there are certain family offices, foundations such as the Gates Foundation, etc., who help build organizational capabilities. Right? Very much as suburban diagnostics would require a chief marketing officer, a chief head of people and culture, finance. All of these are also important to build an organization, which is not supported by CSR. So that's where a certain kind of capital can come from a certain kind of organization, such as foundations. We have the Nilekani Philanthropies in India. We have the Tata Trusts in India. We have the Azim Premji Foundations in India. So they support that and they can support that. But people who are individually wealthy, right, and have done well for themselves, I believe they can again contribute to an organization and leave the decision to the organization to decide what the best use of their money could be. But in order to do that, you have to trust them, and that takes time. So, which is why I go back to spending time first. Almost think of it like an investor uh, who invests in a company, but is not necessarily telling the founder how to use the money. Right? What should that money solve for is important, but I'm not going to come and say, hey, here's how you're going to spend my every dollar or every rupee. Right? As long as you're committing and delivering to what we have mutually agreed on.
Right.
I think flexible capital with some degrees of freedom, with the end outcome in mind, end goal is clear, but the pathway is something that you trust the entrepreneur to deliver, is something that I would encourage.
I think that brings me to that area of transparency and myths that surround this area. That how do you breed trust? There's always this myth that is the money being put to use correctly. For example, if you're hosting a fundraising event in a 5-star hotel, you wonder, who's paying for it really?
Yeah.
How can a not-for-profit organization host it in a fancy location? Or how can they attract this quality of talent that needs to be paid for? How much of the 100 rupees that I'm giving is actually going to the end cause, and how much of it is being used for managing expenses of running the outfit? These are some of the questions that have. Maybe you could help us bust some of these myths or apprehensions.
Yeah. So, Dr. Sanjay, I think if we go back a little bit in the conversation, and when you said what is that, what is social entrepreneurship, right? I think these questions are very, very legitimate and should be answered. But the starting point is, how big is your dream, and how real is that dream, and do you have the capabilities to get to that dream, right? If we anchor the conversation on that, if that remains the core, then these things become secondary but not unimportant. All right. Of course, there should be a good transparency, good governance, financial accountability to how the money is spent is important. But I do believe that uh, that being the epicenter of the conversation sometimes takes the conversation away from the problem statement and the impact that we want to do. Right? However, having said that, most organizations on an average spend about 90% of the funds that they receive that goes directly to the communities,
The
cause, and the 10% is something that is reserved as an overheads
okay,
to build the organization.
right.
That it has people, other capabilities that an organization should have. At least we've kept at that, at the nudge.
Oh.
Right. It's a 90-10 sort of a play.
Okay,
And just like any publicly listed company, there are annual reports. The financial information is disclosed on where the money has gone. Audits happen on the utilization by reputed organizations, and these are now currently mandated. Right, and we have
right.
so that hopefully solves for that information gap.
Right. Do people use philanthropy more from, tax planning? Is that something also which, sometimes people think that, oh, this is just for getting tax benefits. What's been your expect sort of experience in that?
I there's nothing necessarily wrong about it, right? If somebody is doing, yes, so the answer is it does help me get some benefits when done, and when done in a timely fashion as well. So if I'm going to get some tax exemptions, that is perfectly fine as well. That is one of the, I would say, top 3-5 incentives. Whether it is the topmost or the fourth or fifth is subjective, but it helps. In India, you get an 80%, an ATG certificate rather, that allows you to apply for 50% tax exemption on your donations. So it helps everybody concerned. So yeah.
How do you think is the future of philanthropy in India? I mean, the new wave of Indian donors or social entrepreneurs. How have you seen the landscape changed over the last 10 years, and how do you see it evolving over the next 10?
Yeah. Uh, we've always had a very rich tradition and culture of philanthropy, of giving. But in the last 10 years, in particular, since the law has come into picture, I think
The CSR law.
the CSR law, which we were speaking about, there is more structure. It's more formal. It's bound by regulations, and there are people who are trained on how to do this.
Sure.
Meaningful way, and it's a large quantum of money that is available to do good work. So that is here to stay for a very, very.
But still, it doesn't compare with, say, the quantum of money that, say, you see in the US, as you mentioned the names like Gates Foundation and the likes. You see Mackenzie Scott, how she's, committed to giving so much of her money away. We don't see that level of sort of philanthropy in India, right? Or am I wrong in that? You did mention some names like Azim Premji Foundation and the Nirankani Foundation and, the Tata Group, big names. But you see some other bigger names that don't seem to be part of, the top list, big industrial houses in India that somehow don't feature in this list. I mean, is it by design that they're not there, but they're there, but it's not being seen? How do you bridge this gap? Because India is still, you have extremely wealthy people, but there's also a lot of inequality.
Right.
So just some questions in my head, I thought.
You're right. I mean, we are a very rich country with a lot of people who are poor.
Right.
So that inequity is unfortunate. Radical philanthropy, like the examples that you mentioned of McKinsey Scott, etc. I think we don't need to see more of it. Uh, but quietly doing very good work, which is also uh, in our culture very modest,
Correct.
profile.
Yeah.
I don't want a lot of noise around the good work. Is something that's very innate and intrinsic, which I find very surprising. Right, uh, because we do have a culture of celebrating successes, right? Successful exits, successful startups doing very well, but great quality work that is actually helping somebody else.
Right.
Why shouldn't it be celebrated? But that is for everybody to decide for themselves. But those celebrations actually also send a signal to other people to do similar work. Right. If we continue to be very low profile about it, then nobody knows. Like you said, Sanjay, if nobody knows, you're not going to be producing more Atul Satijas or Srirams. If there has to be more Atuls, then we need people to be celebrated as well. Right. So institutions like the Tatas, Birlas have been philanthropic fundamentally for many, many years now, like more than 100 years. But they have been quiet in doing many of those things. In the last 10 years, it has lent, like I said, more structure, more form and shape to it. But I do believe today, with the number of millionaires and billionaires that India is producing, right, the giving can only go up, right, from here. How faster, how meaningful, how informed is that giving is something that will go its own stages of evolution. But I would say just start somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. How can individuals contribute? Is it money? Is it mentorship? Is it skill? Is it time? If somebody wants to start, people who are listening to us and say, okay, I want to be part of this. What's the easy way for people to one is, of course, join an institution, but can they do small things on their own as well?
Yeah. Like they say, charity begins at home. So small acts of giving, right? Giving could be all of the above that you mentioned. I would say start giving time first in that order. Time first, I think capital money will follow that. If your heart is drawing you or pulling you in some direction, money is going to be a byproduct of it. With several people who are successful in India of having built things at scale, such as yourself, Sanjay, I think mentorship is key, particularly for social entrepreneurs. Today, for profit entrepreneurs, there is a very active mentorship ecosystem.
Right.
Right. People learn from others' failures and don't have to repeat it.
Correct.
Right. So there is a lot of collective wisdom sitting for profit entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs also need the same.
Sure.
So yes, mentorship, time, money, access, because we do struggle to get to the right people, right? So all of these things matter, just like any other organization, and in any combination of the above four, I think the help is great.
Since the name of the podcast is Exceed the Brief, if I was to ask you to finish the sentence, to exceed the brief in philanthropy, what does that mean to you? I mean, how would you uh, complete that sentence? To exceed the brief in philanthropy means exceed the brief means going beyond the obvious. So the way I articulated, from ordinary to extraordinary, you would be a little bit extra. So that's exceed the brief.
Right.
Go beyond what is told to you. So if you were to sort of look at your experiences in philanthropy, what does that mean to you, exceeding the brief?
I would say if we are fundamentally able to change the culture, starting from our homes, and start celebrating doing good for others over doing good for ourselves, right? Uh, that would be for me exceeding the brief.
Now, this has been great. I think, you really made us think differently and how we can contribute. And as you say, I think every ripple counts, really, actually. So, who have been your mentors or influences or people who have motivated you in, doing what you do today?
Uh, I think the work is the motivation here. Every time that you go on the ground and you interact with the communities who you're trying to serve, that is my biggest inspiration. Right, inspiration slash motivation on who am I working for, right, and is that a meaningful pursuit? Now, the learning and wisdom of am I doing it in the appropriate way? Am I doing it in the most efficient way, fastest way? Right. That I think Dr. Sanjay is informed by a lot of people. The first ones being my own colleagues in the organization. I've never considered myself a very smart person, but I'm extremely privileged to be working with an incredibly bunch of very smart people who I learn from every day on how can I do my job better. How can I bring more money to the work that we are doing? How can we build meaningful government partnerships with the support of whom we can scale what we are doing?
Sure.
So that's mostly coming from my peers and colleagues and teams within the organization, and also from the sector at large.
Right. But I've heard, like, I've heard Rohini speak at various forums, and she's such an inspirational figure. I mean, do you know her well? I mean, do you interact with her, and what's been her influence over you?
We have interacted with Nilakani Philanthropies, including Ms. Rohini. I think the way she puts it, right. So there is Samaj, that is society. There is Sarkar, that is government, and there is Bazaar, that is markets. Right. So Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar, when they come together in unison for solving a social problem, uh, true magic can happen. Uh, but it is up to all of us to bring them together and keep them together for a very long period of time.
Right. And problems that are there, I mean, there are so many. Is there a way to filter and pick the ones which, you know, will have the most impact, or the ones which are just closest to you from your heart or gut feel? Like I said, trafficking of women is, for some reason, I don't know what is the reason for it, but it sort of pinches at me a lot. How do you pick a cause? I mean, is it where biggest value for the money and time that you spend, or I don't know, I'm just trying to understand that.
Dr. Sanjay, I would go back to why did you choose to start Suburban Diagnostics? Because you cared about the problem of healthcare and unburdening health because of that, as I've read from your post. So I think it starts from something that personally connects with you. The extent of the problem doesn't matter as long as you care about it, because I need to care about it for me to stay invested in the problem. So whether it is trafficking, whether it is upliftment of women, whether it is education of underprivileged kids, whether it is sanitation or recycling, waste management, it could be anything. But as long as what are you passionate about is a question that one needs to answer for themselves, that answer itself could change with time. Right, that's all right. But once you found the answer, then we commit to it.
You picked up some of my biggest passions, that is education. I think education is the backbone of any society. So the more education you can provide, the better it is. I think safe drinking water is such a huge problem, because I've come from the healthcare background, so I know the value of safe drinking water and sanitation. And you mentioned these words as well. Now I'm hoping that uh, we'll build stronger relationships with you, through you, to other places where we can truly make a difference. So once again, thank you, Sriram, for taking this time and being with us today. This has been a enlightening experience, and I'm sure our audience is going to have a lot of thoughts on how they can be part of this as well. So thank you again for taking this.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you.
Today's episode is Philanthropy with Purpose. What does it take to move from charity to systemic change? In this episode of Exceed the Brief, I spoke with Sriram from The Nudge on how social entrepreneurship, collaboration, and empathy are reimagining India's approach to giving, and how you can make a difference. India's approach to giving is just starting, as Sriram said, and I look forward to you being part of this journey with all of us. Thank you for joining today. And in case you are wondering how you want to be part of this journey of philanthropy, reach out to Sriram, and his information is provided in the description below.